Jack and Tu Tien, a journey of love and resilience. The airport terminal buzzed with the restless energy of travelers, announcements crackling over the intercom, suitcases rolling across the polished floor, and the faint hum of jet engines in the distance. Jack stood near the security gate, clutching his plane ticket to New York. His neatly pressed suit and the faint lines of fatigue around his eyes betrayed the weight of the moment. This wasn't just any trip. It was a pivotal business venture, a chance to secure a deal that could elevate his fledgling financial company from a dream into a reality. He glanced at the overhead screen. His flight was boarding. With a deep breath, he adjusted his tie and prepared to step forward. Then his phone vibrated in his pocket, a sharp interruption to his focus. Fishing it out, he saw his mother's name glowing on the screen. A flicker of curiosity crossed his mind. Why now of all times? He hesitated, then pressed the phone to his ear. "Jack, you must come back now." His mother's voice burst through, urgent yet tinged with an unmistakable joy that threw him off balance. "Mom, what's wrong?" "I'm about to board," he replied, his brow furrowing as he glanced toward the gate. "It's Tu Tien," she said, pausing just long enough for Jack's heart to leap into his throat. "She's pregnant." The world seemed to freeze. The ticket slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the ground like a discarded leaf. Pregnant? Tu Tien was carrying their child? For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The clamor of the airport faded into a distant hum as the news sank in. They had been hoping, praying for this moment, but now, with his flight about to depart, it hit him like a thunderbolt. Without a second thought, he turned on his heel and bolted toward the exit, his suitcase abandoned by the gate. "I'm coming home," he said into the phone, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. "But your trip," his mother began. "It can wait," he cut in. "This is everything." The taxi ride home was a blur of city lights and honking horns, each passing street a testament to his growing urgency. Jack's mind raced faster than the cab itself. A baby. Their baby. He pictured Tu Tien's gentle smile, her quiet strength, and the life they had built together over the past 3 years. Late-night talks, shared dreams, and the little apartment they'd made their own. This news changed everything, and he couldn't imagine being anywhere but by her side. When he finally burst through the door of their modest home, the sight before him stopped him cold. Tu Tien sat in the living room, bathed in the soft glow of a lamp, her hand resting tenderly on her stomach. She looked up as he entered, her dark eyes meeting his, and a tired but radiant smile spread across her face. She was his fairy, as he'd always called her, delicate yet resilient, a light in his often stormy world. "Is it true?" Jack whispered, crossing the room in 3 strides and kneeling beside her. She nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Yes, Jack, we're going to have a baby." He reached for her hand, his fingers trembling as they brushed against hers, then pressed his palm to her stomach where their child was growing. A warmth flooded through him, a mix of awe and love so profound it threatened to overwhelm him. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "I'm staying right here with you and our baby." Tu Tien leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. "I was going to tell you myself," she murmured, "but I didn't want to stop you from your trip. Nothing could keep me away from this," he replied, pulling her close. "Not a deal, not a flight, not anything." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack sat with his mother in the kitchen. She had come over to celebrate the news, her eyes crinkling with pride as she looked at her son. "It's time, Jack," she said softly, stirring a cup of tea. "Time for you to have a complete family." He nodded, the decision already solidifying in his mind. "I've made up my mind, Mom. I'm going to ask Tu Tien to marry me, not just because of the baby, but because it's what I've always wanted. This just makes it all the more clear." His mother smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "She's lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have her." 1 week later, the garden was alive with color and light. Roses and lilies spilled over trellises, their fragrance mingling with the crisp air of a perfect spring day. Warm yellow lights twinkled among the branches, casting a golden glow over the scene. Jack and Tu Tien's wedding had come together with breathtaking speed, a testament to their love and the support of their families. It was small but elegant, a gathering of those closest to them, all there to witness the start of a new chapter. In the bridal suite, Tu Tien stood before a mirror, smoothing the fabric of her white gown. The dress hugged her gently, its skirt designed to flow around her subtly rounded belly. Her best friend, Zhang, adjusted the veil with careful hands, her eyes misty with emotion. "You look like a dream," Zhang said, stepping back to admire her work. "Jack won't know what hit him." Tu Tien smiled, her fingers brushing her stomach. "I just want this day to be perfect, for him, for us, for the little one." "It will be," Zhang assured her, pulling her into a quick hug. "You deserve every bit of this happiness." Across the garden, Jack fidgeted with his tie, standing beneath a flower-laden arch. His best friend and business partner, Juan, stood beside him, grinning as he clapped a hand on Jack's shoulder. "Nervous?" "A little," Jack admitted, exhaling sharply. "I just want everything to be right for her." "It will be," Juan said. "You two were made for this." The music swelled, a soft melody that signaled the start of the ceremony. The guests turned as Tu Tien emerged, her father at her side, guiding her down a path strewn with petals. She was breathtaking, her hair cascading in soft waves, her eyes locked on Jack's, a quiet joy radiating from her. Jack's heart pounded as she approached, and when her father placed her hand in his, he felt the weight of the moment settle over him. "Take good care of her, Jack," her father said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will," Jack promised, his grip tightening around her hand. The priest's voice rose above the gentle rustle of leaves, reciting the vows that would bind them together. "Jack, do you promise to love and care for Tu Tien, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for the rest of your life?" Jack looked into her eyes, his voice steady and sure. "I do." "And Tu Tien, do you promise to stand by Jack, to build a happy family together, through all that life may bring?" Tears glistened in her eyes as she nodded. "I do." The exchange of rings followed, simple gold bands that gleamed in the sunlight, symbols of their unbreakable bond. When the priest declared, "You may now kiss the bride," Jack lifted Tu Tien's veil with trembling hands and kissed her deeply, pouring every ounce of his love into that moment. The guests erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the garden. The reception was a blur of laughter and celebration. Friends and family toasted the couple, their voices mingling with the clink of glasses. Zhang hugged Tu Tien tightly, whispering, "Finally, you've got the happiness you deserve." Even CEO Tone, a business acquaintance with a complicated past tied to Tu Tien, approached them. He had once harbored feelings for her, a quiet longing he'd never acted upon, and now he stood at a distance, watching her with an unreadable gaze. Yet when he came forward, his smile was genuine. "Wishing you both all the happiness in the world," he said, raising his glass. As the night wound down, Jack and Tu Tien slipped away to a quiet corner of the garden. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Tired, wife?" he asked softly. She leaned into him, her voice warm. "Not at all. Just having you here makes everything perfect." He kissed her forehead, whispering, "You and the baby are my everything now." Their home welcomed them back that night, adorned with fresh flowers and flickering candles that cast a cozy glow over the rooms. Tu Tien sank into a chair, her hand resting on her stomach, while Jack settled beside her, his eyes gentle and full of wonder. "Are you tired today?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She shook her head, smiling. "Just a little nervous." "It's real now, we're husband and wife." Jack took her hand, pressing a kiss to the back of it. "You've been my wife in my heart for a long time. Today just made it official." She laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. "What do you think about the future? Our family, your company?" "I have a plan," he said, his tone earnest. "When our baby's born, I want a stable career, something solid to protect you both. The company's my dream, but you're my priority." Tu Tien nodded, her faith in him unwavering. "I'll support you, no matter what." He placed his hand over hers on her belly, his voice softening. "I'll do everything I can to give you both a good life." The months that followed were a golden blur of peace and preparation. Jack rose early each morning to cook for Tu Tien, poring over recipes to ensure she had the best nutrition for their growing child. They attended prenatal classes together, giggling nervously as they practiced breathing techniques and swaddling dolls. One afternoon, at an ultrasound appointment, They saw their baby's heartbeat flicker on the screen, a tiny, miraculous pulse that left them both in tears. "It's real," Tu Tien whispered, squeezing his hand. "I can't wait to meet them," Jack replied, his voice thick with emotion. They painted the nursery a soft yellow, hung curtains with little stars, and folded stacks of onesies, each task a thread in the tapestry of their new life. But even in this idyllic time, shadows loomed on the horizon. One crisp morning, as Jack sat in his office reviewing contracts, his phone rang, an unknown number. He answered, expecting a client, but a deep, distorted voice cut through the line. "Jack, do you think marriage means you're safe? Some people don't want you happy." The words hung in the air like a threat. "Who is this?" he demanded, but the call ended abruptly. A chill settled over him, his mind racing. Who could want to disrupt their joy? A competitor? A ghost from his past? He forced a smile when Tu Tien emerged from the kitchen with a glass of milk, her brow creasing as she noticed his tension. "Who called?" "Just a wrong number," he lied, unwilling to burden her. But the unease gnawed at him. Days later, a letter arrived at his company. No return address, just a scrawled note. "Be careful who you trust. Not everyone wants you to succeed." Jack's jaw tightened. Someone was watching, waiting. He called Juan, his voice clipped. "I need you to look into this. Someone's targeting me." "Got it," Juan replied. "But be careful, Jack. You've got a family now." That evening, while Jack worked late, Tu Tien was alone when the doorbell rang. Thinking it was a delivery, she opened it without hesitation. A man stood there, his face shadowed by a black hat, his eyes cold. "Are you Jack's wife?" he rasped. Her stomach dropped. "Who are you?" He thrust a photo into her hands. A wedding picture, Jack's face slashed with red ink. "Tell him to drop his plans, or someone pays the price," he said, then vanished into the night. When Jack raced home, he found Tu Tien trembling on the sofa, the photo clutched in her hands. "What happened?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Someone threatened you," she whispered, tears spilling over. "They were here." Fury flashed in his eyes, his fists clenching. "They dared come to our home? I won't let this stand." That night, they sat together, the weight of fear pressing down. "I'm scared, Jack," Tu Tien admitted. "What if they hurt you or the baby?" He pulled her close, his arms a shield. "I'll protect you both. We'll face this together." Jack threw himself into uncovering the truth, working with Juan to trace the threats. Was it a rival angered by his company's growth? A personal vendetta? The police offered little help without evidence, so Jack took matters into his own hands, determined to safeguard his family. Yet through the uncertainty, their love held firm. Months later, Tu Tien gave birth to a healthy girl, her cries filling their home with new life. Jack's company stabilized, his resolve unshaken. The threats faded into silence, their source never fully revealed. Perhaps a competitor's bluff, perhaps something more sinister. But it didn't matter. Jack and Tu Tien had each other, their daughter, and a future they'd fight for, no matter the cost. As they stood together in the nursery, watching their little one sleep, Jack whispered, "We made it." Tu Tien smiled, her hand in his. "And we'll keep making it, together." Their story wasn't over. Challenges would come, as they always did. But with love as their anchor, they were ready for whatever lay ahead.